I don't know what's going to happen in the rest of Midnight, but I hope it involves a nuclear meltdown that destroys Maisara Caverns. What a bleak, miserable dungeon. Burn it to the ground and never let it come back. There's always some drama in here. It's the least ran dungeon across all key levels, and it also has the lowest in-time success rate. But somehow it's still here in Season 1, so today I'm going to take you through the whole dungeon, and hopefully spelunking in these caverns won't be as intimidating.
You guys are in a crisis. I'm on my way.
The main problem with Maisara is that there are roughly 20 million mobs in there, and they're all on top of each other, especially in the first area. There are buffs you can pick up, but they're on opposite sides of the first area, so you can't have both unless you want to plow through 12,000 trolls and end up with like 300% enemy forces. The community hive mind has decided that the buff on the right side, the 3% leech and damage taken reduction, is the better and safer option, so you'll see most tanks go this way. The nature damage buff on the left just isn't that strong, and the one time I had a tank go left there, it was like being in a roller coaster and watching it go off the rails Final Destination style. Needless to say, that run wasn't timed or finished, but me being a rad Mistweaver monk with like 235 item level also didn't help. Moving on, the first pack of trolls here is super dangerous for your tank. These berserkers heal themselves all the time, but they also have an enrage that makes them attack 30% faster and do 20% more damage. They need to be soothed and or nuked into the ground because otherwise they will fold your tank like clean laundry.
How do you fold it? Do you fold it in half like a piece of paper and drop it in the pot, or what do you do?
Because this dungeon is so, let's say, open plan, I'll go through all the mobs and you'll know exactly when to panic. Like if your tank pulls 2 of these elephants and they both do the roar.
Do the roar!
Our first immune to CC mob is Dread Soul Eater, and that name is accurate. It does Necrotic Wave, which does an arc of shadow damage between players, and then it applies a healing absorb. It's important to heal and defensive through this fast because it already does a lot of damage and leaves people vulnerable for other incoming damage. The Soul Eater also makes it rain toads, these circles, and standing in them will likely kill you, so watch your feet. The next immune to CC mob is this hulking juggernaut, and you probably want to avoid these at higher key levels because they truck your tank with rending gore, and then they turn around and roar so loud that everyone goes to sub 50% health, and that's at like a 13. And if you were casting, you just got interrupted. If you use a defensive right before this deafening roar goes off, by the way, your healer will probably name their firstborn child after you.
If one of y'all says some silly ass name, this whole class is gonna feel my wrath.
The final immune to CC mob before the first boss is Hex Guardian, and I loathe this stupid mask from the bottom of my heart. It does rot damage to the whole group and sends out fiery debuffs that leave erupting puddles on the ground. But their most dangerous ability is Magma Surge, where they will target a random player and shoot piping hot lava at them in a line. If you have a red arrow above your head, for the love of Bwansamdi, move out so that everyone else can see which way the Guardian is blasting his death ray. This mob sucks, but if you can move out of the way, it's a safer pull than these roar elephants. The other mobs here aren't less important or dangerous, by the way, but at least you can CC them. We've got these bears that chew on your tank's armor, not great. Tiny masks that shoot random people. This stupid bird doing scratchy talents, sidestep that or die. The ritual hexers that hex people. Umbral shadowbinders that try to shrink people. This does a lot of damage and walking into a full-sized player will stun you, which is kinda hilarious to be honest. And finally, there are headhunters that throw spears at people and try to root them with hooked snare. This cast is worth interrupting or in the worst case using a root removal, because if you're fighting the Soul Eater at the same time, you'll need to be able to move out of the rain of toad circles. And then we get to the first boss, and I don't know what it is about duo fights, but please try to kill these sort of evenly, because if one dies before the other, it's not great. If Murjin dies first, Necrax, the bird, will get a stacking enrage that will make them do 20% extra damage every 4 seconds. That's gross, and your healer will hate you, but it can be recoverable. If Necrax dies first, however, Murojin will start resurrecting his pet, and if you don't kill him before the 10-second cast is over, Necrax will join the fight again with 35% health. I don't have to spell out how bad that is, but somehow some DPS just annihilate their target without ever looking at health bars. This fight is about knockback, swirlies, diseases, and you probably guessed it, bleeds. Murjin jumps away occasionally and throws a spear towards the tank. This does physical damage, knocks them back, and applies an open wound bleed to them for 10 seconds. Big Dirty Birdie Necrax applies infected pinions to the whole group, which is a 30-second disease.
Oh, no, it's not serious. Nothing terminal. It's just a touch of consumption.
If you play the resto healers like I do, this is basically a rot damage healing check. But priests, paladins, and invokers can remove the disease from 2 to 3 players before it falls off naturally, so that can help. And if you're a Death Knight, you can anti-magic shell while it's being cast and you won't get the disease. Muradin will drop freezing traps on and near players. Move away from these for now because they will freeze you for 8 seconds. Necrax will then jump to a player and you will see this giant circle while the bird is casting Fetid Quailstorm. You need to move out of the big circle, but right after that, Necrax will put small death circles around the room. The easiest way to avoid stepping in these tiny circles is to step out of the giant circle, and then when it's gone, step into the area where the circle was, because mini circles won't spawn there. Muradin casts Barrage at a random player, which is basically him spraying that player with venomous arrows, and it applies a stacking 5% movement reduction. You want to stand still when this ability goes on you, but before that you want to be loosely spread as much as possible, because any player caught in the barrage will also get the debuff. The last big mechanic of the fight is Carry On Swoop. Necrax will rush towards a player and knock them high into the sky. If the knock of the ability doesn't kill you, you will likely die to fall damage. To prevent death here and stun the boss, you have to run into one of these freezing traps Muradin left on the ground. Necrax will then run into your frozen body and get stunned, and you will be broken free. The most important thing here is to know that Necrax will hit everyone in its path, and it has a pretty wide hitbox, especially on its butt. So if you see Carry On Swoop, you might need to sidestep a little bit to prevent you from flying away. Doubly so if you're the tank, because Muradin will then do his flanking spear right after that will knock you even higher into the sky. After these bosses are dead, we're moving on to the spirit/actual cave part of the dungeon, and for some reason you can mount here. Look, I'm not mad, this place is gigantic, but it's kind of weird how you can mount in a cave, but not in a place like Windrunner where there's a lot of open outside area. Anyway, we've got a bunch of annoying enemies and only 2 bosses left. What's the worst that can happen, am I right? We've got a bunch of these Grim Skirmishers, and they have made a deal with Hades to change a bit of their health for an Absorb shield. When they lose the shield, they do a blast of shadow damage to all players within 60 yards. You can break these shields by damaging these mobs, but if I'm playing Resto Shaman, I like to purge off 1 shield at the start of the pull, get everyone healthy, then purge another one so I can stagger the damage coming in. Because you can imagine how painful it is when all of the shields break at once due to damage. And jumping forward a little bit into the dungeon, this is why you need to unbind Arcane Torrent if you're a Blood Elf, because later on the bridge to the last boss there will be a sea of these little mobs, and using your Torrent there will be instant death to the whole group. It will also be hilarious. In this first area, right after the first boss, we've got a Gnarldin that's
immune to CC.
Its melee attacks cleave shadow damage on the whole group. It does a physical tank buster that slows the tank for 8 seconds. And it does a large smash on the ground which damages you if you're in it, but it also puts a shadow damage circle on the ground. This is especially gross if it's paired with Roxal, the immune to CC mini-boss, because he will put a clone of himself on the ground with a purple circle that will suck players towards it. And if you have that going on while there are also smashes on the ground, it might be hard to move around. Especially if you're ranged and or a healer and you need to get closer to the altar in the middle. Because Roxal occasionally picks up a player and puts them on the altar for ritual sacrifice. They will take heavy damage and they need to be released by killing the Death Grasp or, you know it's coming, using a root or snare removal ability. And while this is going on, there are tormented shades and they're constantly blasting everyone with Spirit Rend. This can be interrupted, but it seems to be going off constantly, so as a healer, assume you're going to have the Dispel on cooldown and do a lot of triage healing here. Before we get to the second boss, we've got a Bat.
Bat!
This one has an interruptible frontal and 2 mobs that are immune to CC, Hollow Soul Render and Bound Defender. The Soul Render rends souls on nearby spirits, and this puts an AoE shadow damage circle on the ground. The Render also does a magical tank buster that can be interrupted, but don't interrupt it if you're playing with a Prod Warrior, because they will get sad and cry. And the final ability is Frost Nova, which puts a giant circle on one player that will root the player and everyone in the circle. You can get out of this with a root removal like Blessing of Freedom. The other immune to CC mob is Bound Defender, and it sometimes raises a shield. Don't attack into it. It doesn't damage you or anything, it's not healer mechanics, but it does do something even worse. It lowers your overall DPS. The defender also does the same melee shadow cleave as the Gnarlin, and it summons 2 Soulstorm tornadoes that will damage you and knock you into the air when they hit you. Try to avoid these as much as possible because they will knock you into annoying things like a bat. The second boss is Fordaza, and I hate this fight. It's giving Theater of Pain, and I don't like it. This is a raw damage fight with some big damage spikes. From the moment the fight starts until Fordaza dies, the air in the cavern is saturated with withering miasma, making everyone take shadow damage every 2 seconds. Then she does a shadow damage and a 4-second heal absorb on the tank with Drained Soul. But the main mechanic of the fight is Rest Phantoms, where she spawns 4 adds around the corners of the room and they fixate on one player. This will never go on the healer unless somebody in your group dies. The Phantoms have a 99% damage reduction and they can only die when they make contact with another Phantom or a player. You don't want to run into a Phantom because you will die, so you need to move in such a way that your Phantom will touch another player's Phantom. The reason why this phase is so difficult is that Fordaza also does a spinning frontal that pushes you back if you're caught in it, and it applies a dot, so you're running away from the frontal while also dodging Phantoms, and then when 2 Phantoms touch and they die, they splash damage on the whole group and leave a puddle. It's a whole bunch of chaos. Fordaza has one more ability and it's more dodging. She puts a shield on herself with Death Shroud and starts channeling Necrotic Convergence. This will do extra raw damage to the whole group every 2 seconds, and there will be orbs of death swirling around the room. Players need to damage her shield to break it, and then they can interrupt her channel. The channel can go up to 1 minute if you don't interrupt it, and the effects will become more and more intense. So yeah, best not to find out what that means. We've got more of the same trash mobs on the bridge. Remember, no Arcane Torrent, bad Blood Elf.
Hell no!
But we got one new immune to CC mob right before the last boss. This mob will be annoying long before you even see it because he's banging on ritual drums and it sends giant fists to smash down and jump across the bridge. You can tell where this is going to land, so try to step out of the way. The more annoying thing is that once you hit the stairs, he will start pulsing sonic damage to the whole group, and this can drop people very low. So defensives, and as a healer, rush up there before the rest so you can actually heal people. The last boss is this big boy Raktul, and he does a 3-smash wombo combo on the tank that yeets the tank and then drops a massive puddle under the boss on the last smash. Because the rest of this fight is dropping totems, avoiding circles, and killing the totems while they suck you in, the tank should really drop this to the side or back of the room. There are also 2 spots by the braziers where the boss won't drop a puddle, but this can be risky because the smash might launch you into orbit. Raktul then targets 3 random non-player tanks with crushed souls. The game will tell you if it's on you and you will get a green arrow above your head. Raktul will jump to you and then spawn a totem where you were standing. These totems need to die as soon as possible, so it's important to loosely stack them for cleave, but also not too close together because these will cast Soul Bind on random players, which will pull them in and damage them. The damage from Raktul landing on you with crushed souls is completely avoidable, by the way, like the Decimate from Seed of the Triumvirate. Unlike Seed, you don't even need a movement ability. Once Raktul is in the air and you see the circle under you, you can literally just strafe out of it. Or you can stand in it without a defensive and take 50% damage on the chin. After 2 rounds of crushed souls and totems, Raktul sends out a soul-rending roar and pulls everyone out of the boss room to the start of the bridge. If there are totems left alive at this point, Raktul will shatter them and you will wipe. Otherwise, Raktul will be stunned and you have to race back to him, avoiding spirits on the bridge because they will root you, and these mobs in the circles can be stunned, interrupted, displaced, etc. for a damage buff. The faster you get back to the boss, the more time you get to damage him for free while he's stunned. So bloodlust and hope you kill him, otherwise the fight continues as normal with Spirit Breaker and Crushed Souls. And that's Maisara Caverns, a depressing, bleak cave that you can somehow mount in. People seem to avoid this dungeon like the plague, and for good reason. Thanks for watching.